Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video, we're talking about the latest hotfixes to World of Warcraft Shadowlands. This is not the first one. There were some hotfixes that came out, but I don't even think they were quite as focused as these ones are. Let's go ahead and go through them, and then we'll talk about what's included, but also what's not included, because I think that's almost more important for what's been going on the ladder. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Number one, okay, tuning changes just came out Friday, the 23rd. So number one, players now deal 20% less damage to DK Hunter Warlock pets. Specifically, Hunters and Warlocks are going to be very happy about this. This is because people have been saying that Hunters specifically, that my pet is just getting killed. It's just getting cleaved down. It's, you know, getting chain harvest down. Whatever it is, it's what the heck, Blizzard? Like, and then what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Because it provides a lot of utility. It provides Mortal Strike, and for Warlocks, can provide interrupts and such, but and some other utility, but they just die very fast. So they've made it so it reduces damage. Now, again, this is a first example of what's not included. Well, the cast time for Hunter pets, or for Warlock pets, is very long, and that was something else. Even if you, let's say, deal 20%, you know, the 20% less damage, you push through that and you kill those pets, they still have a 5-second summon to summon or revive their pets, which is pretty sad for those classes, especially when they're not like crazy incredible compared to some other classes. So I think that's just the first example of that. The next change is in 2v2 arena, dampening will begin at 20% when both teams have either a tank or a healer. That's pretty interesting. So one more time, in 2v2 arena, dampening will begin at 20% when both teams have either a tank or a healer. This is very interesting. This means that if it is double DPS against double DPS, which could include hybrid classes like Ret Paladins, like Enhanced Shamans, and they're going at it, the dampening will not be in effect. It's an interesting twist. So that's pretty interesting. So that's an example. If you have double DPS, you will not have dampening. So that means hybrids like Enhanced, Druids, Paladins, Ret Paladins will not have this effect in place if there's just DPS and DPS. Maybe this is encouraging players to not necessarily need a healer and to have fun still in arena and to be a little bit more viable. Maybe because, let's say, for example, if both teams don't have either a tank or a healer, and why the heck are we saying tank? You know, that's besides the point. But let's say healer. When both teams have a healer, dampening will begin 20%. If one team is double DPS into healer DPS, dampening in this case will not start at 20%. It's kind of interesting, right? So the healers, you know, so it's kind of quirky, right? Like, does that favor the double DPS? Does it favor the healing team? Well, I would say that it favors. Well, I would say it's just going to be. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out. I've never really thought about having it in some cases, not having it in others, because when this was in place, and it was in place for like all BFA and a long time, made 2v2, at least you get in, you can start feeling pressure pushing right away. And then when they removed this fairly recently, a lot of people were like, whoa, we are now doing like 10-minute 2v2 games every game. What's going on? And it felt very bad. So I'm interested to see how this will shift. Q to Q, you might not have that healing throughput, or you might have it, you might not. It's kind of interesting that could flux. But I guess if you queue up as a double DPS, you will never have the dampening starting. If you're two healers, you will. It's kind of weird, because I almost feel like double DPS might want the dampening to be in effect so that they can get pressure, and the healing, or in a double DPS situation, you know, let's say it's not there aren't hybrids there, then they would want dampening in effect, most likely. So something to think about. If you think about Rogue Mage, also, that means that this dampening won't be in effect. So actually, it should be good against Rogue Mage. So I know I've talked about this a lot, but it's kind of an interesting like on-off switch that is going to be happening. So let's go on to the next one. And this is one that I kind of called this one, right? Druids, Convoke of Spirits no longer cast Full Moon. Let's pause there. That's huge. During the Convoke, which is like, what, 4-second channel, you cast 16 Druid spells. Boomkins were using this and getting full moon procs. I think it was like a 2% proc chance, but it was 2% to proc a full moon, hits the target without casting it, without building it up, gave you a ton of astral power, gave you the big pump. when this happened, I got hit for like a 28k one, just yesterday. So I kind of saw this one coming. It was kind of crazy to all of a sudden have this huge, enormous proc without really doing anything to work for that type of damage. So they're removing that from the pool of damage. I also saw this being called out on the MDI tournament that Blizzard was running, because similarly, they were like, if they get a full moon out of their Convoke, it could be huge. So that's that. Now for Feral, Convoke no longer gets Feral Frenzy. Interesting enough. Feral Frenzy was one of the Feral options that were available. Unleash Furious Frenzy, calling your target 5 times, etc. Now I've heard, like Snuppy put on Twitter, that this is actually a good thing for Feral Druids because it has a higher chance to proc Ferocious Bite. You might now get more bites out of a Convoke instead of getting Feral Frenzy or other less damaging abilities. So that's good for them. So seems like it's a nerf to Full Moon, but also a buff to Feral. And you don't see that many Ferals. You do see some, but maybe this is a good thing for Feral. Boomkins are everywhere, including RBGs. We've been doing a lot of rated battlegrounds on stream recently, and holy moly, there's a lot. I guess the meta people were saying was like 2 or 3 per group, which is like a bit excessive to me. So with that being said, let's move to the next one. Mage, Triune Word Legendary, which is the legendary when a mage uses their shield. They use anyone, if they're frost, if they're fire, if they're arcane, doesn't matter. When they use their shield on themselves, they will get all of this shield from all of the specializations. Casting barrier effect, granting the effects of blazing barrier, ice barrier, prismatic barrier. Now this says the legendary now provides 50% effective barriers, and it was 65% in PvP situations. So this is reducing that down, and people say it's like 45% reduction of what it was to this, but regardless, each shield has been reduced in the amount that it will absorb. Now, it's a little unclear. I don't know why these stars are here, frankly. I don't see any references to why that's there. But in general, this is actually kind of makes sense to me. I think this is a good change. I know I'm not a mage main, but frankly, mages have... Not only did they have this legendary, they also got mirror images this X-Pack in terms of defensives. Now, clearly, cloth, squishy, whatever, especially in such a high damage melee, a lot of melee cleaves out there as well. Meta, but frankly, mages weren't even viable targets. They just absorbed so much because of how often they could refresh their multiple barriers. As a shaman main, I wouldn't even purge off the shields because it wasn't worth my mana to do so. I would rather save that for healing or whatever else. So it's this change I did see coming. This was a pretty crazy defensive legendary. I don't know if it means that are they going to switch to legendary that's a more offensive one? Are they going to keep using this because they have to? Are mages going to be too squishy? I don't think so. I think mage survivability is going to be fine, especially with how fast-paced things are going. I think we'll go to the next part. So that's what I think here. I am actually pretty happy with this. I think that was pretty crazy to say that you can't really ever focus a mage. Now the next one, mage, fire, specifically Infernal Cascade. Now this one, if we highlight it here, it says that, what is this in general? Maybe you're not familiar with fire mages. While Combust is active, your Fire Blast grants you an increased percentage, like 9% increased fire damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. So if you double 9%, that's 18% increased damage. That's a pretty huge buff. Now, this effectiveness is reduced by 33%. Now, this is probably focusing on the fact that combustion is such an insane cooldown. Combustion is a cooldown that fire mages use. They catch on fire, and all of their abilities will now hit and crit. And so this was kind of definitely a buff to that burst window. But in general, Combust was doing insanity damage. 100 to 0, people, lickety split. So it is interesting. I'm not that surprised either to see this because it was truly overpowering. I think where this is something that's not mentioned here is what's going to take the place of that burst. Obviously, there's probably, that was an outlier in terms of how much damage there really was there. But how is that Fire Mage going to do damage now? Are they going to have to rely on G-Pies again? Are they going to have to get damage from another source? Maybe they have to go a legendary that does more damage. Because if you watch Fire Mages, you watch the AWC, you see Fire Mages use Combust, and then they spam Fireball to farm their Combust back to burst it again because it was that devastating of a cooldown. So how are they going to do it now? Is it going to be more focused gameplay? Is it going to be more setup? Like, what, you know, it's always setup. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments so far in this list, what you think, kind of part 1 here. And, you know, by the end of the video, let me know what you think entirely in the comments. I'm really curious what you think, because there's been a polarizing effect of the current meta. I think some people are saying nerf this, nerf this, nerf this, nerf this. Ret Paladin's crazy, nerf it. Fire Mage, nerf it. And on the other side, a little bit softer, people are saying, yo, buff Fury Warrior, buff BM Hunter, buff Outlaw Rogue, buff. Bring these up to those crazy aspects, because people are enjoying those classes. You know, when your class feels powerful, when you're feeling strong, you feel good. So if everyone's felt like that, then you wouldn't need to nerf anything. Well, let me know what you think of that in the comments below. I've heard a lot of the pros say that, you know, don't nerf things, just buff things. And in these notes, there is 0 buffs. And that's something that's missing. As I said in the beginning of this, that's where I see Blizzard needs to probably respond in some ways, right? Like, for example, fire. If their combustion windows are now not, well, I mean, they were too much, in my opinion, way too much. But now if that's the case, what's their alternative? Maybe they have to go, I mean, maybe they end up going arcane. I could see that happening. Frost. You know, like, what's going to happen to counteract this? I actually expect people to look at Frost a lot more now because of how they can slow down some of the speed of what's happening in Arena, specifically with the Ret Warriors, etc. So that's just a guess in my mind. But let me know what you think down below. So again, Mage defensive nerf, I think this probably makes sense. Kind of a nerf, I kind of agree with it. Now the bottom part, let's go ahead and go into Paladins. Paladins were the 3rd class that was touched here. Holy. Divine. So Holy Paladins, just to quick and catch you up, they are the best healer in Arena. I just checked recently. There was, I should say, 10 Holy Paladins that were above 3,000 rating. I looked at Mistweavers. There were 10 Mistweavers that are above 2,400 rating. What does that tell you? Just from those numbers alone, 600 rating difference. 10 players, 10 players. Unbelievable. I think that's where, that just kind of shows you where Paladins are. I think this current stats are around 40% of healers above 2,400, if not 50 now, are H-Paladin. I think that's a little glaring. So that's where we're at. That's our starting point, and then this came up. And we also saw in the AWC, basically everyone almost ran Holy Paladin, except for, I think, it was Lone Tar, right, on our Shaman, and then we saw some Disc Priests. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into it. Holy, Divine Favor, cooldown increase to 30 seconds, it was 25, adding 5 seconds to that cooldown. And increases the cast speed of by 30% was 60%. Interesting. This is actually good for shamans and good for people that can purge priests and shaman, I guess at DH. But this means that they have a longer time to cast, which means we have more time to purge off the buff, which is actually really a big deal for us. It obviously doesn't change their throughput, but this will actually allow us to purge this off easier. Because of this speedy cast time, it was actually very tough to get this. You had to preemptively always be looking, keeping the Paladin clean of buffs, and then you have to get it quick. If you were on a global, you would not get it. It would not even be possible if that was the only buff on the Paladin for you shaman out there. Now that this has been changed, we might actually be able to, after our current global, get the purge, get the wind shear. Okay? Again, this goes for warlocks, priests, anything that can purge, blood elves. This is a good news for you to be able to counteract some of that. Now, the 5 seconds is nice because 25 seconds was a really short cooldown, honestly. But 5 seconds, is that enough? The thing about this is 2 things. Number one, that the mana efficiency of Holy Paladins is pretty crazy. It's very strong. The other thing is their healing throughput is it's almost like they're the only healer that can heal a bunch of the classes in the game against the amount of damage in the game right now. And I think without Combust and Full Moon, that's okay. That's one thing, but that's not like the Windwalkers, the Warriors, the Ret Paladins. With their amount of damage, Holy Paladin is the only healer that can keep up. This can as well, but will go very fast. So I was really expecting them to increase the mana cost of Word of Glory, or one of their other abilities, so that it would actually make them kind of reduce how long they can kind of keep it going. So that's that change. Now also Prot and Ret. This is something I think everybody saw coming. Word of Glory healing has been reduced by 20% in PvP. For only, remember though, this is only for Ret and Ret and Prot. That means that Holy still has 100% throughput, but Ret and Prot have 20% reduced healing throughput. Interesting. And I think it makes sense. Now, I will be honest with you, I'm really, really, really surprised that they did not increase the mana cost of Word of Glory. Because other hybrids, they have a mana pool, and that goes away when you start casting heals. Shamans fall into that. Druids, maybe not so much. They can regen that pretty easily by just ignoring it for a little bit and like doing other things in other shapeshift forms. But Prot and Ret, they don't really use mana. They can just spam Word of Glory endlessly. And that's something I didn't really understand when an enhancement shaman can get out 4 heals and then he's or hers right? While paladins can just use Word of Glory forever. So that was one change that I was expecting. Actually, I was expecting that instead of a throughput nerf, but they nerfed the throughput. So it's kind of interesting. There's still a healing battery for their team, but it's just 20% reduced input. So that's it. That's the only changes so far. And we have kind of been waiting for like a long time, actually. So that's the changes. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I just want to mention a few things that I think are missing from this. I kind of already touched on them. And frankly, what I wish Blizzard would do instead, or kind of change up their approach to how they do changes. Number one, what's missing? So again, this is all nerfs. And to everyone's point, like, it would be better if Blizzard did do some type of buffs. Obviously, these are some big changes, and these changes might change the meta. It might also change people that just re-rolled Boomkin. But here's 2 things that are going on right now. Number one, there is no communication happening. And the changes are coming very non-frequently. And that's a problem because we're seeing nerfs, but really we should be seeing buffs to a lot of different classes. For example, Mistweavers, my buddy Mystical. This is for you. Mistweavers are not played at all right now. There are a few, but they're also just they're just like cream. There's the pinnacle, right? But they're just not, it's just not viable. So why are they not being buffed? Why doesn't Blizzard just throw 8%? Give all heals from a Mistweaver 8% increased throughput. Why not try it? There's nothing to lose from showing that you're willing to take a stab at improving things for certain players. Because what's going to happen to the Mistweavers, to the Mistweavers, to the R Druids, to some of the R Shamans, to these classes that are not viable really, to the Fury Warriors, to the Survival Hunters, to a lot of players. What's happening right now is they're re-rolling. And thank God we have a PvP vendor, but what it also allows us to do is gear alts and get them up to speed very quickly. This is making it so that the ladder and the LFG area, which I'm actually still looking for partners in LFG, Holy Paladins, well, that's about it. I'm just looking for healers in LFG. There are only Holy Paladins, and it makes me very sad. There's only Holy Paladins and Disc Priests, and some Disc Priests that play this specific comps. There's no one else, and that is scary. To think that all these people are re-rolling, all these Druids, all these Shaman, all these even Priests are re-rolling Paladin. That makes me sad, because it means that they might not even be playing the class they want, and it also locks in certain compositions that will then only be viable and will force other people to either quit or re-roll to more viable classes. I'm an Enhancement Shaman. I'm an LA Shaman, Resto Shaman. I know so many Enhancement Shaman that have re-rolled to Rets, to Warriors, to a lot of Windwalkers, because they're hybrid technically as well. But that's terrible. Like, I really believe that Blizzard should be making tuning changes. Like, just throw 5% out there. If Blizzard shows that they can go on to a certain schedule of balancing in a little bit or a big ways, to show that, hey, you know what? If you're that class, you're not going to have to sit and for 6 months and wonder when things are going to change. You're going to see changes every 2 weeks. People will not re-roll. The meta will not get locked in at all stages of the ladder to be the same comps. If you play the game at 1500, 1700, 1900, 2100, you will see the same comps. It's because people are re-rolling. People are playing only certain things. I don't think this is the way that it has been in the past, or at least in BFA, where it was like certain comps were at certain levels, like, but right now it's not the case. You literally have the same comps at every stage. So I think that the biggest thing that Blizzard could do to make people stop being pushed into 4 classes or 6 classes is to show that they are willing to make changes, like by buffing Mistweaver by 8%, 10%, throw it. Just try it. Why not? 6%, do 2%, give 2 more percent, 2 more percent. See the population change on the ladder. And Blizzard, if you want help, I'm willing to help, because I think communication is the biggest thing that they could do right now to change the game. Is say, we're going to be talking to you every 2 weeks on like on streams or something, developer stream, and even if it has to be one-way communication because toxic chat, but just say like, we're looking at Mistweavers. We understand that there's low representation, there's low throughput, they go they have problems. We're going to try buffing them by 4%. If that doesn't work, we're going to have to make other changes. If they said that, all the Mistweavers would not re-roll or quit the game, or, whatever it is, or go Windwalker, right? And if they said to Windwalkers, Windwalkers, we know that you're doing incredibly, like you're pumping damage crazy. We're looking at that. We might tone that back. It might stop the Enhancement Shaman from re-rolling to Windwalker. That level of communication and involvement in the community, I think, would be incredible, and it would actually take WoW PvP to the next level. I think that is one of the biggest things, to show that they're in it and they're communicating and they see. The communication is the biggest thing, I think, that could be a big deal. And frankly, I know that there's some other classes and specs that are also at the top end, like Windwalkers, Arms Warriors, some things that people are saying, why aren't they being nerfed? So, even Ret's damage, I was expecting Divine Toll to get either a cooldown increase or something, because that slaps, and it's also a huge healing throughput. So there's a lot of things that I think people are wondering about, but it would be good to get a perspective from Blizzard. So with that being said, that was my long rant after I went over the changes, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. We're going to be talking about this on stream. We already talk about it all the time, about people that come into stream and want to re-roll, and I'm like, guys, oh man, it just hurts me. But with that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for the support on stream and on Patreon. We'll see you in the next video or on stream every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care, everybody.